Today's most amazing sensation, H.G. Wells's Phantom Commando. It's taps for the Axis when they encounter America's invisible agent. Welcome back to Entertainment Rebooted. Specifically, welcome back to another episode of Cinema Revisited, the Universal Monster Movies. I am joined, as per usual, by my esteemed co-host, DJ. He shall just gesture because, due to a mishap, one of the microphones was busted. And I don't know what phantom agent came in and ruined our plans, but I'm sure that they're paying for it dearly. Um, anyway, so tonight's film was none other than 1942's Invisible Agent, where we see yet another Invisible Man sequel, this time taking place in World War II, the midst of it, for a secret mission. DJ, do you want to give a brief synopsis of the film for the audience?
This is gonna be so noisy in the background. Oh, this is so sad having only one mic. Oh, it's falling.
We're going to have 0 mics soon.
It almost fell off the thing. It was getting close. Oh, technical difficulties are fun. Okay, so this one follows much like the other monster movies do, and following the whole trail of family of the previous people that had this thing, power, whatever happened to them. Frankenstein's been doing this for a while. They're like 4 in, and they've had um, the Frankenstein monster like come back several times. Um, Dracula's done it with Dracula's daughter, and now we are at the same spot with Invisible Man yet again. The last time we left off with the Invisible Man, it was the Invisible Man Returns, I believe.
Invisible Woman.
Well, Invisible. Well, I guess it kind of ties into it, but not well.
This is the most recent Invisible Man.
But the Invisible Man had an entirely different like doctor, didn't it? Create the formula.
I think, yeah, it was different, but
yeah, this one follows the trail of events from the Invisible Man, where it's his grandfather who created the formula is the person that we're following now, and it starts out kind of wild. It literally starts out with a bunch of like Germans just like walking in.
Well, Germans and like Japanese.
Oh yeah, Germans, Japanese come in to interrogate the grandson of the Invisible Formula creator and try to get him to give it to them. But it's actually kind of a fun premise. Whereas the other ones were more of like a psychological thriller horror, this one is like a spy thriller, but with those same kind of psychological elements. So the young man who is the inheritor, I would say, of the formula, is accosted by these men in order to give it up to them. He refuses to do so and gets away. And then the government asks him for help with it, and he turns them down, and then war starts. And then he comes to them saying that he will give them, or he'll help them out as long as they let him be the one to take it. And so he takes the serum and goes into the war as a spy. And a lot of the film happens in like one house. It's like one scene, which actually harkens up quite a bit to like the roots of the Universal films, where the original ones were like very few like stage sets that they used for stuff. This one very much harkens like that, but then it gets kind of wild towards the end. It gets involved with Nazi soldiers and Nazi spies, and but still with the same Invisible Man antics of distrust, loyalty issues, paranoia, psychological decay, and just straight up crazy behavior and inability to control. What's the word? Like your cravings and things. No self control. No self control. No. So, which are all things that the previous Invisible Man and Woman have all shown to different degrees. Um, and that's really it. It's just a very different take on a universal monster film that we've seen. It's like a war thriller.
Yeah, it barely fits into the monster category if it didn't have its tie back to the Invisible Man franchise.
But one of the things I actually liked about that was kind of fun about this whole tying it in that way, is it's doing what I've wanted newer films to do, like Marvel and other things that have been around for a long time, is to dabble with different like genres and things. A lot of these films, even the Universal Monster films, have tasted different genres. They've done thriller, they've done horror, they've done psychological, but a war thriller is not really anything they've ever done. And so it was really fun to see like this interconnected universe they've kind of created. Invisible Man has kind of stood as a separate thing from the others. They haven't it hasn't mixed quite like the others have so far. Um, I'd like to see how that goes in the future. So it's fun. It was a fun film. So back to you, sir.
Oh, I have the power. So anyway, as you guys know, we like to do the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic for these films. Starting off with the good. In my opinion, the good of this film is that creative story element where they did kind of take it out of its normal genre. So it really works well. It's an interesting story. It's a very original story. It feels good while, like, not feels good. It feels like it is a good film. Um, that's kind of where I'm going at. Sorry, I'm just off
You're
today.
good.
Uh, but the other thing is that it's not only unique, it feels extremely original, but in a very fun way. So while the film is going on, just I was interested in following it the entire time. It was off brand, like The Invisible Woman, but I'm more willing to accept this as being part of the canon of Invisible Man as compared to The Invisible Woman, where the tonal shift felt really, really odd. This one, even with the tone shift, I thought was very good, very original. What about you, DJ?
Ha. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned the tone shift specifically because that was something that the Invisible Woman's problem wasn't that it was a comedy; it's that it wasn't a good comedy.
Sure.
They randomly did a comedy out of it. She was good. The Invisible Woman was good, but everyone around her was silly and nitwitty. This one was a lot more serious
Mm-hmm.
and high stakes than that one was. There's a little, all of them had little silly wittiness to them, but the Invisible Woman just like went ham fisted with the humor and lost a lot of the psychological aspects. She did though give in to like the her vices like really easily, um, and her inhibitions were gone. That is something that has been consistent. This one of the goods that kind of goes along with that change, I actually like is the side characters, the background characters are believable and feel real. Um, they're not slapsticky like Invisible Woman, and they're not like cardboard cutouts like in the first or second Invisible Man. Like the first Invisible Man had a lot of side characters that were insane. Like the lady that was just screaming all the time, and then they had like the old lady that was bickering at her. It was like this weird characters that didn't mean anything to the story.
Yeah.
The second one was very. Um, second one had like this whole subplot thing where like his friend was betraying him, his business partner was betraying him, but it wasn't really as interesting as like what was going on with him being on the like that's was the setup for him being on the run, but the characters weren't convincing. The guy that betrayed him was like wasn't even a good villain. He was just a guy that was there.
Yeah.
That hurt those films a little bit. This one, the Nazis film, I gotta say, it was like one of the best parts of the film is the Nazis. They are really good at portraying them at being. Um, they give them dynamic characteristics. They're not just all like mindless soldiers, but they all believe in the cause. So they're all but they're all also betraying each other. And he talks. There's a line in the film where he's like, "You guys betray each other to the point where you destroy yourselves into nothing." And that was really good. Just the way that they portray them as good villains is good. There's a little bit of comicness to them, but it's not like Hogan's Heroes level where it's slapsticky. It's believable, like um, just mishaps or like tripping and falling, but cleaning themselves up and being like, "I'm better than this." It was a good portrayal of the villains and the people that were involved in it.
Yeah, we're getting better at this.
Yeah.
Uh, but speaking of things that weren't getting better, the bad. My transition powers are incredible.
Yes.
Um, so the bad of this film, I'd probably say like once again we're back into this creepy aspect in relationships, especially with like the Invisible Man part of it. He comes off very creepy when it comes to the lady in it. So the female spy that he meets up with, he literally shows up in her room while she is changing into like nightwear for an evening
Yeah.
with this SS officer guy. And the only reason that she becomes aware that he's even there is while she's taking the dress off to change dresses, he sneezes. He fully intended to just watch.
That's what it feels like.
And then he comes off really, really strong again, like not even like in a romantic way, just like very
like
strong.
The werewolf guy.
It was
like
kind of like
creepy,
yeah,
stocky. Yeah.
yeah. Whoever, I think that it's probably a similar writing team, or they like took notes off of the Wolfman. They were just like, I really liked this. I really liked Lon Chaney's dynamic in the Wolfman. We should make him, but invisible. What would I do if I was invisible? So I would say the bad is once again like the relationships. It seems to be a trend with the Universal monster movies. Like the relationships are either really well done and believable, or they're
Really toxic or
really toxic.
There's
or
no image.
outright.
There's
creepy.
no like just average color. It's like they're either insanely in love and strong, or they are wire you together.
Yeah, so that's what I think though is like the bad of the film overall, because the dynamics are really well done, the acting is pretty well done. It's just whenever they try to force a romantic moment, it's not there. It's they don't got it.
Yeah.
You're much better than I am.
So, actually, that's a good one. Is the dynamics of the relationships and stuff. But I was gonna say actually one of the bads for me that actually stuck out throughout the film was the inconsistency of the characters' like skill set.
Mhm.
The spies weren't good spies. The guy, the invisible guy, makes sense because he just gets thrown in there. But they kind of like mention a little bit that they do a little bit of training with him first, but they throw him in there and he's like suddenly like an expert spy at like some parts, but he's also losing his mind due to the. So the problem is I can't tell with his antics what is his inexperience and what is his psychosis from the. It's hard to tell
Yeah.
sometimes. Is he doing this because he's crazy from the visibility stuff, or is he doing this because he's an inexperienced spy that doesn't know what he's doing? And
Right.
I get confused sometimes. Like I'm not sure what the cause is here. And the lady spy, like she's like really bad at being a spy. They try to make her. They talk about her being a really good spy
Yeah.
and being really good, but they show her being really bad at it. I'm like, I don't understand. And then it's like they want her to be the damsel in distress, but the character, but she's the really good spy character, and they can't pick one.
Yeah.
Until like the end, she's like suddenly a good spy. It's like I don't know. That was a little confusing. So just in some inconsistencies there in characters, um, and their skill sets just really set me off on that one.
Yeah. All right. Moving into the ugly. Um, I mean, one thing that would be like ugly specific to the time, but it definitely did not age well for this film, is the fact that I don't believe that the Japanese agent guy, like the head of the agency guy, was actually Asian, and as a result, it was really hard to like place.
They put like
what? Yeah,
he wears glasses at just the right angle that makes it difficult to tell.
yeah,
And I thought he was a German for a long time. His accent
yeah.
sounded German to me,
Exactly.
and I didn't realize he was supposed to be Japanese. I was like, oh. And then I'm starting to hear it later on. I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get it now, but it wasn't very clear that's was the case earlier on. I just
Yeah.
missed it. I guess I wasn't paying close enough attention.
So I would say that that's kind of an ugly with it. It's like
I
it's
was wondering
very
if he either
hard.
wasn't fully Japanese or if he was either half, but he doesn't look.
He doesn't look.
But all the
or
guys
come
around
off
him
as-
are
yeah.
like at least Asian. I don't even know. One guy, there was one guy in the film that was Vietnamese that was supposed to be Japanese, and I was like, yeah, I don't think they care.
Yeah. Well,
Like, about being accurate.
Yeah, they weren't very good with the accuracy and representing like the actors well. It could just be a limitation of the time. So I'm just saying the ugly as far as like it's definitely one of the things where it's like if I'm talking about this.
Well, I feel like it would be hard to
Yeah.
get Japanese actors in America during that time.
Well, 1942, 1941, 1942, probably.
Hey,
Yeah.
President, can we let some of the Japanese people out of the camp so we can have them act in a film? Absolutely not. Oh, okay.
Wait, not only do you want me to release them, you want me to put them on camera for the nation to see? No.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's kind of an ugly. Is it's just like it's very apparent, and it's something that for the time, like watching the film, it's like okay, it kind of pulls you out a little bit, and you're like, okay, I have to remember when this was filmed and why they would be like that.
Right.
So that would be, I'd say, the ugly. How about you, DJ?
Wow.
Haha, better.
Nice.
Nailed it.
So this one was hard for me because this is probably one of the first films in a while, at least, where it doesn't feel like there's a solid ugly that like hits it really hard.
Mhm.
The characterization of the actors is a big one there that's glaring. But another one that I can pinpoint, maybe it's not a true ugly, but it's definitely problematic in some ways. Um, there's a major inconsistency in like the chain of command in the story. So one of the things that happens in the story is the second in command of the Gestapo in the area is trying to take the position of his superior.
Yeah.
And so he talks about he got to meet with Hitler and all this stuff, and she's trying to get things out of him and everything. I actually, for a good bit of it, thought that he was lying and making up to impress her, but it turns out that he actually did.
Yeah.
Like that actually happened, and he actually had like the plans and all this stuff and everything that was happening out. I don't understand why, because the guy that was in charge before never met with Hitler.
No.
What happened in the change of his absence? What one character's absent, and this guy suddenly is like moving up the chain amazingly fast and well, and that's never really well explained, and that ripples throughout the entire film. There's the lady spy's position in the Gestapo is never really clearly defined, or her like in the hierarchy. The relationship with him and the Japanese guy is not really clearly defined. He gives him a spy book.
Yeah.
Um, and like, oh, that was the only copy, and I hope you didn't lose it. And it's like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
What is going on here? There's this underline of the entire film of some undefined relationships with the characters that trickles and ripples throughout the whole thing and makes it a little confusing at times. You kind of pick up on it and get it after a little bit, or you just give up on it because it doesn't really matter. But it's almost better to just leave stuff like that out. It's like you gave exposition in a film that we didn't ask for, and now we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's the midichlorian effect. You're trying to solve a problem we never asked you to solve, and now that you solved the problem, we have more questions than answers.
Right.
Like what you okay? You gave him the book. Why did you give him the book? I thought he just had it because he's Gestapo. Why did you give it to him?
Because reasons.
Exactly. I was like, you didn't even need to say that. Yeah. I just assumed it was his spy book, and I was perfectly content with that. and then you gave me extra exposition that it wasn't his spy, like it was the other guys, and now I'm like, now wait a minute, I have more questions now.
Question.
And then the guy's like, put her under house arrest because I can, and then he gets put under house arrest by the other guy because it's all internal and there's no chain of command following this stuff, and it's like, who's in control here? What is actually happening? It's just a lot of chaos, a lot of inconsistencies, and that just feels ugly to me because it doesn't completely derail the film,
Right.
but it definitely feels like they wanted to make a war propaganda film, and they cared more about making the Nazis look like really terrible people that don't trust each other or treat their own people well. They wanted to show like how bad they were together. It didn't care the how or the why. There was
Right.
there was no reason right with it because the Japanese guy betrays the German guy. The German guy betrays the Japanese guy. All of the support, they all betray each other. There's a lot of this betrayal, but it doesn't really make sense in what's going on sometimes. Like, why is he betraying him? They're not even really a team. They just have a same interest at that moment,
Right.
getting the Invisible Man, and then there's just all this intrigue and internal destruction. And I think they just wanted to make the Nazis look how untrustworthy and horrible they are. And look, even though the Japanese are like our enemy, look how honorable they are. It's just a weird thing to like focus on when you're just trying to make an Invisible Man movie.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what I would call that for the ugly. Maybe just propaganda took over, but yeah.
It's true. All right. As far as like iconic, all right. Iconic. What would be iconic?
There's a few I can think of for this one. This one's easier.
Yeah, I'd say the graphics, like the visuals. It's once again back to the stunning visuals. Like they actually do a couple of things that are very creative. They kind of played at it a little bit with the Invisible Woman and the Invisible Man Returns. They tried a couple of these different things, um, but they do some of it like on camera when they actually apply the makeup, for instance, to him.
Right.
They do it on camera, and it's actually really impressive how they pulled it off. And then obviously they have like the manipulation of the different objects in the room. But one of the ones that stood out to me outside of the makeup and the soap and stuff was actually they had the cup not only get picked up but drank and empty on camera. I thought that was just really. It's
Cool.
impressive how they pulled it off, and I'm curious how they pulled it off. Was it like green screen mask and they kept an opening for him to drink? Was there some sort of receptacle behind a screen that they were just dumping it? How did they pull that off? And the fact that it's 1942 and I'm still like 2024 knowledge of like the CGI and different graphics and stuff like that that they do. The fact that I'm still kind of like, how did they do that? Is I think iconic. Like they're very very good with this visual and it's still stunning how they're pulling it off. So I'd say that's the iconic. How about you, DJ?
That's good. Wow. Yeah, the Invisible Man in this one was really good. That was a big one. For me, I would actually say what makes this film iconic is it's the first time that the Universal Monster series has significantly deviated from its present course.
Yeah.
This is what I would call the beginning of like an experimental phase for Universal. You can tell they're starting to, okay, people know these stories. They know we can't do Frankenstein monster comes back and beats people up for the 15th time with Invisible Man. We're gonna have to do something different. And this whole agent thing, when I originally happened, I thought maybe they were actually going to get the formula for me. The Invisible Agent was going to be like a German or another agent, but no, it's a U.S. agent that goes into German soil and attacks from within, and still gets the crazy juice and gets a little paranoid and everything. That's a really fun story. This was something that I didn't expect Universal to do. I thought they were really going to stick hard to like the monster theming, and maybe they'll go back to it hard after this. But at least at this moment in time, it feels like a fun departure from the what we've always gotten, while still keeping the soul of the original alive. There's still the Invisible Man character still carries a lot of that loss of self, loss of control things that we're used to, without they don't muck all that up when they take it to a different story direction. And it's a really cool thing to see. Universal has done this before. It actually reminds me a lot of oh shoot, I'll remember the name of the movie. The one about all the comic characters that work together.
Avengers?
No. Sorry. That's a good answer. It's fictional characters that all work together, like the Invisible Man and
League of Extraordinary
League of
Gentlemen.
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
There's a scene in that movie where like the Invisible Man is like sneaking into the enemy base and he like gets intel to the other people. Like Invisible Man has been used for that kind of stuff in different mediums, but it's fun to see it done like way back at the beginning when it was newer.
Yeah.
It was young and new and not tried 1,000 times. Like this is like the first time Invisible Man is getting thrown into one of these high stakes situations, and I'd like to see if they do that with other characters. Like take other characters into unfamiliar territory. It just feels like an iconic moment in the history of film in general, where you start seeing characters that have a genre that defines them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they defined the Invisible Man as a horror thriller character in the monster scape with icons like Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Mummy. And they take him and put him in an entirely original environment that's separate from that. It's just a fun, cool concept that I know it's nowadays that's like, oh yeah, we do that all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but this is when it was first done. This is like probably not the first time. I'm sure other people at the other studios around the same time were doing this too. But this is the first time watching movies straight in a row from one studio's main genre from 1931 to 1945. We're seeing a significant change, and that just seems like a big deal to me.
Yeah. All right, we've gone over the good, the bad, the ugly, and the iconic of Invisible Agent. Now let's talk about what are some things that we would do if we were given the property. Just briefly, like what are some things that we would do with the concept of the Invisible Agent? If we were told by Universal, even today, back then, whatever, Universal comes out to us and they say, DJ, we're writing the Invisible Agent. How do you make this dream of ours come true? How would you write this story?
Okay.
Okay. So for me personally, I would probably go with kind of what you had mentioned. I would have made it to where the invisible formula was taken, and now we're dealing with like a horrible horror situation where there is an agent possibly on the loose, and they're trying to figure out how to find him. And also maybe there's like espionage on the other side, or the Invisible Man gets captured on a mission, and then the Germans may have replicated the formula, and things start kind of going wrong.
Kind of like Captain America with it, where it's like Captain America Red Skull, where like they have their own Captain America, but he's like, not complete or whatever. You just do, but it's the Invisible Man instead.
Yeah. So I would go with something like that, just because then it's like, okay, what you could actually lean into is the thriller element of, okay, an enemy of the state has the formula. We can't find him. How do we find him, and what is he doing? You could kind of lean into that.
Yeah.
It could even be a thing where there isn't actually an invisible agent. It's a regular guy who claims to be invisible.
Yeah.
And things are going wrong. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's an invisible man. How do you fight something you can't see? And then it turns out, like, no, he actually, like, psyoped the government because they know that you have an invisible person. And the only reason that you're freaking out is because you have an actual invisible person.
Right.
And they claim that they had one. But it's actually just like a regular guy doing psyops.
Gotcha.
I think that that's kind of where I would go with it, because then it's more horror, more thriller-esque.
Gotcha.
So, how about you, DJ?
Okay. So,
not as good that time.
For me, I actually like the idea a lot of how it went. But there's some things. So first things first, One of the things that was striking from the beginning, again, this was meant to be propaganda. You can tell this is very heavy as propaganda because they immediately have the Germans and Japanese come in and like try to force it out of him. Yeah. And the U.S. government's like, oh, we've known that you have the formula and about you this whole time, but out of courtesy for you, we didn't want to bother you. I was like, bull freaking crap. Uncle Sam be at the freaking door, be like, give that formula to us for your country or we'll kill you. freaking like, oh, we out of the U.S. government, out of respect for your privacy, didn't want to, infringe upon you. Oh, bull crap.
Well, they did kind of lean into also, like, if you notice, like, whenever they're talking about their own government, they're just like, oh, I could be killed for something like that. I could die for something like that. People have been shot for less.
Yes.
It's like, okay, dude, we get it.
It's really heavy-handed, and I would make it more nuanced. Mm-hmm. So I like the way the Germans were portrayed. That's fine. Yeah. They were a mess. They were bad. They did do a lot of that stuff. They had secret police. They had like a cult-like following of Hitler. That's fine. But they still give them kind of humanity. Like a lot of the characters have like, they feel like real people, just people with ambition that is allowed to go too far because they on the correct side.
Yeah.
That they were fine. But I would portray the Americans. I would have it start the same way, where the Germans and Japanese are trying to get it out of him. And I'm on the fence if I would want them to succeed like your idea, and then have them still try to get their own guy after him. I actually like the idea of it being a twist. So what I would have done is have it open the same way, with the Germans and Japanese spies trying to get the formula out of him.
Yeah.
And he gets away, so they don't get it. And then he goes to the American government. The Americans are like, well, we're going to confiscate it from you because it's too dangerous in your hands. And he protests, but they take it anyway. And they struggle with it. They can't quite figure it out, and they come back to him like, okay. Turns out that your biology is part of the equation because it doesn't work quite right on other people. I like that aspect because so far it's always been like someone in the Invisible Man, it's always been someone related to the original person.
Right.
The doctor that does it to the person he does it to is not him, but the doctor is himself who administers it is related, and it has devastating effects on him. That was one of the things I actually thought was interesting in Returns, is that guy, it hit him way harder than the original guy. So I think it'd be really fun to have like a genetic aspect. Like there's something about the genetics of this family. Like when he tested the formula, he tested on himself. So they're more resilient to it because it's formulated for him. Yeah. And it's in his genetics. Other people, it's not designed for them, doesn't go so well. And so the experiments aren't going well, so they recruit him to do it. And I like the idea of the war convincing him, because he's like, no, I'm not going to do it, but they just take it by force. But then later on with the war and everything, he comes to them and he's like, you know what? I understand the war. I understand what's happening. I want to volunteer. I want to help. So you have him be like a really strong patriotic person, even though the government kind of screwed him a little bit. Yeah. He's like, well, I mean, I understand, but I really want to help. So they put him in there and they train him to go in, but it's not alone. They have a team backing him up. So he goes and does the Esmeralda stuff, but he has a team behind him, so that he's not on his own. And that makes it more. But then the antics are a lot clearer that it's the formula messing with him. I like the idea of him meeting the German spy and then meeting the girl. Like that was really interesting. Have the German officers leave all that in there. Just give it a little more depth, a little more length, more locations. A lot of it happens in like that one house, in her house. A lot of it is in there. Give it a little more locations and have him moving through the chain. Maybe even have them work together. But I like the idea is like towards the end of the film, it turns out the Germans actually did crack it. They do have an invisible agent. But he's mad because they don't care about the side effects of the medication. And so the guy that they have is just a complete psychopath, and he's like gone nuts against the German. I mean, yes, sounds very Red Skull-ish from the film, but the original Red Skull was a hardcore true Nazi in the comics. I'm thinking of like because this I'm thinking of kind of like before Red Skull film was done. You have this character where he's gone nuts and everybody's after. Like the Germans don't trust him, but they think they need him. But he's come out on really by his side. He's gone nuts, and he comes out against the invisible agent, and there's a conflict there. But I like the idea of leaving it open ended because he doesn't learn until it's late enough. Because I would like to do um, so this is the twist. You're 3/4 way through the film, and he shows up, and then it spins to his perspective.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm thinking like Bourne and Entity, where it like keeps flipping back to other perspectives, and then going back and then showing other people's perspectives during the same events throughout the Bourne series. That kind of idea. You get up to the end, and then it switches to the other guy's perspective, and then you start seeing events from his point of view, either in the same film or in a sequel. And you see the same events that happened in the original, like from his point of view.
Yeah, that could work for sure.
That's what I would do, because then it's kind of doing both. You're getting your movie in there with the villain twist, but you're also getting the invisible agent from the U.S. side.
I like
it. And because he's got that bloodline, and maybe he's even stronger. Because in this one, he kind of resists it a little better than the other families did. You lean into that. He's kind of resisting it, but it's kind of getting him still. The other guy's already gone way off the deep end. But I like the idea of him being like a hardcore true believer Nazi too, because he's fighting it as well. He doesn't want to go against his own people. He's losing his mind. Just a fun way to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, that was a very interesting and physically demanding episode of Cinema Revisited, the Universal Monster movies. We like to remind you guys that the film series that we are watching is the Universal box set for the 100th anniversary. It is a Blu-ray set that consists of the vast majority of the what is considered the classic Universal Monster.
It doesn't get all of the what's considered Universal Monster films, but it gets the big ones, the main one. Your Frankenstein, the ones you know.
Yeah, and then a whole bunch else. They're all remastered. They're all beautifully recreated digitally.
Yeah.
We are not sponsored by the product, obviously, but it's a good box set. You guys would really enjoy it if you want to follow along with us. This is what
some of these films in this set are good, and I don't mean for their time. I mean even now they hold up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like most of the Invisible Man ones have held up incredibly well.
Yeah, they're all really solid films. So we just like dropping that in there. If you guys are interested in following along on this series, that is what we are watching and following. Speaking of watching and following, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave us a like if you enjoyed this video. Let us know your thoughts about the Invisible Agent Universal Monsters, or what you think about our channel in general. We're always open to feedback. We're trying to give you guys the content not only that you will watch, but that you actually want to watch. So we do that by having your guys' feedback in the comments. Otherwise, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and sharing us with your friends. And with that, I think we're done here. So we'll see you guys in the next one.